Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, August 8th, 2020. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the 2020 House elections and where we're looking at expected pickups for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So, looking at the JHK forecast for the 2020 House map, the Democratic Party has a 98% chance at retaining control, estimated to have 235 seats on average compared to the Republican Party's 200 at a 2.4% chance at taking the majority. So the Democratic Party had roughly the same chance of taking the majority in 2016, and looking at the same exact House map, it's hard to see why that was possible. The Democrats have so many good incumbents right now, and it looks like they are going to be the favorites in a number of toss-up races and end up with the House majority and possibly even expanding their seats. In 2018, the overall generic ballot had the Democrats up nationwide by 8%. Same thing holds right now. So we're working with a very similar climate and a very similar voting base. Now in 2016, the Democrats were only up 1% on the generic ballot, ended up losing it by 1%. So it was a 2-point swing from the generic ballot polls to the actual voting data compared to 2018, where the Democrats actually expanded based off the generic ballot. So if we see anything similar, and even a 2-point swing off an 8-point lead for the Democrats nationwide brings them down to a 6-point spread at their worst, I mean, the Democratic Party will still retain the United States House of Representatives. The Senate and the presidency are completely, different questions. So if we look at the Cook Political Report, I waited to do this video because of the fact that they released some data on August 7th, 2020. They moved over 5 House races in certain different political parties' favors, and looking at the data that we have, we see that the Democratic Party, based off the Cook Political Report, is currently the favorite to retain House control. They already have 218 seats, given that they have 187 solid seats. This means that these seats aren't going to be competitive. I think the only solid seat from 2017 that actually flipped was Oklahoma's 5th district, I believe, or that was rated safe by many news medias, and then they ended up going to the Democratic Party. Kendra Horn is the incumbent there. That race is super competitive. And then 17 likely districts and then 17 lean districts, all amounting to 221 Democratic seats. For the GOP, they have 156 solid races, 17 likely, and then 13 lean, which gives 186 races. This leaves 28 toss-up races. Now, since the Democrats have already passed the 218 number, they did not pass the 218 number based off House ratings in 2018. That was largely because in order for them to win, they would have to oust Republican incumbents or retiring Republicans, whichever Republican nominee took their place. And the Democrats did that elegantly. I mean, they were able to take the House majority and win 41 more seats than what they had prior to that election. On election night, even with all of these numbers running high, the mainstream media was saying the Democrats could pick up as many as 35 seats. As many as 35, the Democrats surpassed that at 41. Even in the largest estimation in terms of pickups for the Democratic Party, they were at 35 in a net gain. They ended up with 41. So pretty substantial. I would say despite the Senate being lackluster for the Democratic Party in 2018, the House elections, they outperformed all of the estimations that were given for them. So they very well could do that now. We're starting to see a rating where they're expected to get 235 seats, but if the Democratic Party runs up the numbers the same way they did 2 years ago, they could very well, do better than where they were. Presidential elections only have given more seats to the Democratic Party practically since 2000. So when we look at those House elections during presidential election years and Senate elections, they typically benefit the Democratic Party despite them not being able to win the White House most of the time. And if we're looking at the numbers here, the Democratic Party probably will have a minimal increase. They did very well in 2008, but they didn't do so well 2012 or 2016. They gained 6 seats in 2016 and 2 seats in the United States Senate. 2008 was a very weird election. There were a number of Southern Democrats that were incumbents that were reelected. Looking at a lot of their races, they weren't competitive just because they were so popular in their districts. And then when they retired 2 years later, they became solid Republican districts. There was no possibility of the Democrats even regaining control there. So the Democrats actually won seats in areas that made the House map look only slightly bluer. It was in very condensed districts in states such as California and the Northeast, in areas that were typical Republican suburban areas that have now elected Democrats to the United States House of Representatives. So I expect the Democrats to do a little bit better than 2018, but I don't expect it to be a 2008 250 seat type majority in the United States House of Representatives. So looking at these 28 toss-up races, we have 13 on the Republican side and 15 on the Democratic side. Cook Political Report, I need to talk slower. Cook Political Report gives the 2 Republican races in the likely Democratic column. This comes from North Carolina's 2nd and 6th district. The reason for that is redistricting, not because of retiring incumbents, which they're open seats, but not so much that all of a sudden this race has become super safe for the Democratic Party. They have just been drawn in different areas. And then looking at Texas's 23rd district, this one only narrowly went to the GOP in 2018. I mean, this was a very contentious district, and now it's expected to go to the Democratic Party. Now, for the Democratic toss-up column, we're seeing all 3 seats in Iowa. Actually, I just covered polls from that yesterday. I have the tab open here. You can see I was looking at it. I mean, Iowa's 4th seems to be gone, but the 2nd district is what's really competitive. The Republican is leading there because there is no Democrat incumbent compared to 2018. But looking at Iowa 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, they're all competitive. Maine 2nd, Maine 7th, New Jersey's 3rd. I'm looking at a lot of these races. Kendra Horn, like I said, in Oklahoma's 5th district in New York. So a lot of these races will be a very good indication as to whether or not the Democratic Party will be gaining seats on election night. Some of these we will see called very early in the night, and some of them very just later in the election night or election week, which is more likely than not. Looking at all of these races, they aren't too indicative of the overall statewide performance. We're seeing states such as California and Maine and Minnesota and New Jersey, states that we know how they're going to vote. So I wouldn't necessarily say we should take the House data and directly apply it to the presidential data. Also, gerrymandered districts are a thing, so you can't just always use party composition in each individual state. For the Republican toss-up, there were 13 Republican districts that are considered to be toss-up. If you go ahead and look in the lean Republican column, there is 1 independent district that actually was a Republican district in 2018, Justin Amash. He's now retiring. I believe he's actually a libertarian, so I don't know why they consider it to be an independent, but I believe he left to be an independent and then a libertarian unless he changed his mind again. Party registration isn't too important, especially since he's retiring. It's expected to go back to the GOP in Michigan's 3rd district. As for these likely and lean Republican states, honestly, it's going to be very difficult to see how the Democratic Party can win some of them. I actually think that New Jersey's 2nd district is probably the likeliest out of all of these. I'm not really seeing it with Virginia's 5th district just because of that weird primary. I don't necessarily think that all of a sudden this race is going to be super competitive. It was likely, now it's lean. But looking at, I hate this, looking at New Jersey's 2nd, Van Drew, if you don't know who that is, he's a Democrat who endorsed President Trump. He was one of the 11 out of the 12 Democrats, there were 11 Democrats out of the 12 representatives from New Jersey following 2018. He switched over to the Republican Party following his staunch support for President Trump. So New Jersey's 2nd district, the Democrats could be focusing money here to reclaim it just because of the fact that there is a Republican in what used to be a Democratic seat just 2 years ago. So that was pretty substantial. I think that the Democratic Party will be targeting it. Looking at Montana's at-large district as well, I think the Democrats have a little bit of money to spend here, given that they're going to be focusing on the Senate race and the governor's race. So why not focus on the House race as well? I think Montana at large could be competitive. Same thing with Alaska at large. In fact, Dan Young is the oldest member of the Republican Party in the United States House of Representatives. He is 87 years old. He's going for another 2-year term. If he doesn't retire next time, he'll be running for re-election at 89. So 12 Republican districts that are lean, 17 that are considered likely, and then 13 in the toss-up column. So looking at these 13, again, we're seeing some competitive races that are being brought back up from 2018. Texas 22nd, Texas 24th, for whatever reason, we're seeing some Texas retirements on the Republican side, and they're all becoming competitive. Nebraska's 2nd district, which actually went to the Democrats in 2014 of all years, went back to the Republicans in 2016, retained in 2018, and now they're running a progressive candidate who is likely to run out of voters there, probably hit a cap at 46-47%. We could very much expect Don Bacon to go ahead and carry Nebraska's 2nd district, but for Joe Biden, he could also carry it at the same time that a Republican wins in the House race there. Nebraska is a weird state where they divide their electoral votes based off congressional districts. So Nebraska's 2nd, I would say, goes to the Republican Party, but that's, again, all for the voters to decide. In Georgia's 7th district, we're seeing an open race here. This was super competitive back in 2018. If you remember, this one was called very late, and it looks like there's an open seat now, so it's definitely an area where the Democrats could easily make a pickup in. In New York's 2nd district, a lot of these open races, the Democrats are starting to field very good candidates and have very good possibilities for prospects for their elections in November, and I am expecting some of these Republican toss-up seats to absolutely go to the Democratic Party. Now, for the Democratic toss-up seats, it is possible for the GOP to carry some of these. We could possibly see it in New Mexico's 2nd District, especially in a presidential election year. If you look at the Cook PVI, some of these are, Republican seats at heart. I mean, plus 12 in Minnesota's 7th District. Colin Peterson, actually, despite Trump solidly winning this district, wins there just because of the fact that he's popular. You also have to realize that some of these incumbents only have that going for them, and as soon as they leave, they become Republican districts. As you can see, Republican plus 1, 2, 12, 2, 6, 3, 6, 10, 10. I mean, these are solid GOP districts for some of them. Oklahoma's 5th and South Carolina's 1st. Even Oklahoma, not a single county voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So you have to keep that into account. A lot of these toss-ups for the Democrats are considered to be Republican districts at heart, but the Democrats I still expect to easily take the majority and possibly even gain off their 2018 numbers. It is possible, with Republicans only expected to get 186 seats, which means they would need to carry a number of these toss-up seats in order to return back to where they were following the election, and hope the Democrats don't get a single one. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there is also a Discord link for you to go ahead and join. There's a video on your screen you can go ahead and watch that's tailored towards your interest, and then a playlist for my 2020 House election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.